All right, well, thanks everybody for coming out. I appreciate you guys being here tonight. And first and foremost, I want to thank the restaurant for allowing me to put this together here. It's the first of what we hope will be several different events we'll be having here. So thank you very much to Buena Beach Bar Grill. There is no mic, so I'm just going to have to project. Which is okay. My therapist tells me I'm very good at projecting, so that should be fine. But I'm going to do a reading tonight, some of which comes from my new book, Turning the Stars, and some of which comes from some upcoming works. I have another collection in the process called Null Set, and I also have some fiction I'll be doing. So, the book really sort of, I guess, chronicles a lot of the different relationships and places I've been over the past 20 years en route to really kind of finding the woman that became my wife. And the book is dedicated to her, so I'll also sort of dedicate the reading to her. For my beloved Jennifer, my Polaris, you are the one fixed point of light in my tumultuous universe that is unchanging and ever true. So with that being the case, I thought I would start with a piece, about her from the book, and this one is called Young Summer Gibberish. We were kids without fences, without unlimited text messaging. Who needed that? But we had a magic 8-ball that could tell us all we needed to know, whether to call someone or not. Text-based computer games, pale green glowing cursor, a green you never see anymore, except on monitors in old movies, awaiting our actions, while the high-definition wilderness behind our friends' houses expanded across the planet. We learned Kabbalistic crackerjack magic tricks to cure migraines in dust-choked sunbeams through the rafters of a day camp barn loft. One hand on the forehead, one hand behind the head, palms facing each other. Visualize streams of deep blue and green and aqua. Maybe when I tell you all these things, like a deluge of verbal pop-cap candy fizz trivia, you'll tilt your head to a cascade of dark hair, your burnt umber eyes hanging slightly ajar, baffled, both of us, for a moment, until you put your hand in mine, letting me know you don't mind my gibberish. All right. Thanks. This was actually, I thought I'd throw in some random things from other writers, and there's actually a lot of great writers here. We've got Greg Bovine, who just put out his first novel. We've got Preston, who's also a writer, so we've got kind of a nice literary group here. But I was just looking at some quotes online, and I came across one by a writer named Clive Barker that I just really liked. And it's actually from his book, Sacrament. So I thought I would read it here, because it's about storytelling, and I really appreciate that as a storyteller. So, I am a man, and men are animals who tell stories. This is a gift from God, who spoke our species into being, but left the end of our story untold. That mystery is troubling to us. How could it be otherwise? Without the final part, we think, how are we to make sense of all that went before, which is to say, our lives? So we make stories of our own, in fevered and envious imitation of our Maker, hoping that we'll tell by chance what God left untold, and finishing our tale, come to understand why we were born. So, that was Mr. Clive Barker. But here's another piece. A lot of the content of Turning the Stars is really kind of relationship stuff. So, this one's kind of about the difference between what seems real and what is real. It's called Magnetic North. In that silence and space between worlds, where words fail themselves, sink and disappear in fathomless frozen waters. Phantom whispers tease but never fill the sails, measuring the difference and distance between what's true and what's magnetic, like grinning is. Yes. I did a little haiku too. I try to mix it up. This was a haiku about O'Connell. There are no haiku about O'Connell law. It would be too long. So it's good to infuse a little humor, I think. The next one is really not as humorous. It's actually a real old one. It's about kind of feeling replaced, feeling like somehow through some karmic twist of fate, you ended up with a life you really didn't expect. So this is called Casting, and it takes me all the way back to college, so it's an old one. It's hard to imagine all of our elaborate plans carried out by strangers' hands. Other minds will read the lines that we wrote for each other. Other people will play the parts that we build around them. And we'll just keep reshooting the same scenes until the wrong people get them right. Yeah, you guys doing the nice. Nice. This next one's a little dark. It's about somebody I knew who passed away in Seattle, kind of a club kid. But it's called Fashionably Late. The service didn't start on time, of course. Not that it matters now. After the last after hours, with the light siphoned from your amber brown eyes, your lips balmed for eternity, all done up for some second coming we'll never see. But maybe if I had said yes somewhere instead of no, or been more or less or just otherwise, we'd have been here together in your Gothic dream church for a different reason, and thinking of one thing I'd said instead of many I didn't. Not that it really matters now. Maybe it won't be all that different as the lid is closed over your terminally stylish outfit. You were always at your best when you weren't here anyway. And now, one more time, you're mocking clocks and appointments. You'll always be as you always were, always fashionably late. Yes. So, there were a lot of interesting astrological occurrences this summer. There were a lot of supermoons, which I guess are these like massive, the moon just gets massive and it's close to Earth. So I was kind of inspired. I guess giving credence to some people's claim that I'm kind of a lunatic. But, so this one's called Supermoon. Reshaping silence in the wake of its corona, carving it out of dense polar vortex Midwestern mist, hiding all the while, more monstrous for its invisibility. A moon so full of itself that it could drain half the lake, so achingly close to Earth that it whispers collision. Khonshu, come home to nest, full grown, complete. A fire ladder could almost reach up and quench its thirst, put out the begging, burning, to be anything more than a dim fuzz halo in some tiny creature's self. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to read, this one's, I've been playing around with flash fiction, real short, you try to tell a complete story in like 200 words or less. So this is one I've just been kicking around. It's called Dollar. Thomas stared at the almost perfectly spherical drop of rain that had fallen into the palm of his hand as he stood on the back porch. The precipitation had been heavy, thick droplets, not at all like the Pacific Northwest mist that he grew up in. And the pool in his hand made him think for a moment of a dollop of heavy cream that his grandmother would use in her southern cooking, or the silver dollars that his grandfather used to collect. He closed his eyes and could feel the cool metallic weight in his palm. And then it was gone, his grandfather picking up the coin and twirling it between his dark spotted fingers, making it vanish and reappear from behind Thomas's ear. He later learned, he learned later on that the coin and card tricks had come from his grandfather's gambling days in Vegas, a span of a few years after the Second World War that no one in the family was particularly fond of talking about. But to a 6-year-old boy who didn't know the difference between the scent of bourbon and the scent of aftershave, sitting on the bed of his grandparents' house, it was magic. He shook the memory off, flecks and droplets of water flying from his hand as he turned to go back inside and finish preparing for work. It was the end of the second quarter, so there would be plenty of regulatory and financial documents in the file. This one was kind of fun. It's called The Worst Thing I Ever Did Right. If I'm to be condemned for my many transgressions, I hope it's mostly for chewing on your earlobes and feeling your nipples harden between my fingers, because that is almost certainly the very worst thing I ever did right. I wrote it. Speaking of dirty old men, I have you guys familiar with Charles Bukowski? I always liked his work, but there's one in particular that I always kind of liked, called The Last Days of a Suicide Kid. I can see myself now, after all these suicide days and nights, being wheeled out of one of those sterile rest homes. Of course, this is only if I get famous and lucky, by a subnormal and bored nurse. There I am, sitting upright in my wheelchair, almost blind, eyes rolling backward into the dark part of my skull, looking for the mercy of death. Isn't it a lovely day, Mr. Bukowski? Oh, yeah. The children walk past, and I don't even exist. And lovely women walk by with big hot hips and warm buttocks and tight hot everything, praying to be loved, and I don't even exist. It's the first sunlight we've had in 3 days, Mr. Bukowski. Oh, yeah. There I am, sitting upright, myself whiter than this sheet of paper, bloodless, brain gone, gamble gone, me, Bukowski, gone. Isn't it a lovely day, Mr. Bukowski? Oh, yeah. Slop drooling out of my mouth. 2 young schoolboys run by. Hey, did you see that guy? Yeah, he made me sick. After all the threats to do so, somebody else has committed suicide for me. The nurse stops the wheelchair, breaks a rose from a nearby bush, puts it in my hand. I don't even know what the hell it is. It might as well be my pecker for all the good it does. This is a real old one, another real short one called Afterwards. Memories spent Novembers still cast shadows longer than the last silence we gave each other. And I'm going to mix it up again. So I've got a collection of short fiction I've been working on. And this is just a little piece from it called Despair. Paralyzed and trembling, Tim could barely sit behind the office desk at Jack's Auto Body Shop. Despair! The coffee machine shouted. Tim stared at the indelible stains and splotches on a pot of antiquated Mr. Coffee. The machine knew, and Tim knew it too. There was simply no hope. Dark rings of sweat stained the armpits of his blue work shirt from something more than the August heat that lingered even after the sun was well into its evening descent. Crackle, need, despair! Tears flowed openly down his flushed cheeks. He tried so hard, done everything just the way Dr. Morris had instructed. Counting exercises, breathing exercises, taking 2 pills, one at dawn and one in the late afternoon. And sometimes he'd pop an extra for good measure, even though it made him feel a little bit like one of those zombies on TV. But nothing helped. First the stove in his garden apartment had started talking with him again. Then the toaster, which never had anything positive to say. The more he tried to tune them out, the louder, more incessant, more insistent they became. Just this morning, on his way out the door, he was disturbed by the stove, clamoring for something really big to burn, to char. Tim had reached for his pills with quivering fingers, only to find that none were left in the little brown cylinder. So he focused on his breathing, and it worked for a moment. But then the toaster chimed in, insulting his manhood and saying nasty things about his sweet sister Jane, who had begged and pleaded with her boyfriend Jack to hook Tim up with a job at the shop. Just something simple, where he won't even have to speak with customers. He's great with machines, though, she said. It's like they talk to him. Despair! Crackle. Do you fucking spare? Mr. Coffee screamed. As an added cruelty, the machine was doing a nearly perfect imitation of Jack's voice. Now those voices had followed him to work. Around noon it had been an engine block, and now it was the coffee maker next to the phone, which was flashing with red and green lights, like some macabre mockery of a Christmas celebration. He buried his damp face in the palms of his hands, elbows on the table. Strands of his long, greasy hair hung down like a tangled blanket. Despair. He couldn't do it. Couldn't even perform the simple task that Jack needed from him. He was destined to fail, just like the toaster always said. What was it Dr. Morris had called it? A self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, that was it. He'd imagined his inevitable failure, and now it was being made real by the damn coffee machine. Still shaking, Tim rose from the desk and left the shop without locking the door or turning off the lights. He drove home and drifted into his dingy dungeon of a studio and ran a hot bath. He kept his eyes on the creaking floor to keep the walls from closing in and distorting. He put on his earmuffs to muffle the sound, stared up at the ceiling, and sank into a warm, translucent pool of waking unconsciousness, waiting for the babbling of his appliances to cease. 4 miles away, on the stretch of dirt road near the park that always had lousy cell reception, Jack gave another running kick to the side of his pickup truck, rattling loose some flecks of blue paint to reveal the rust underneath. He'd inherited the truck along with the business from his uncle 18 years ago. Dust motes swirled in the last rays of late summer sunlight. Lightning bugs had started to flash their bioluminescent Morse code from the shadows under the tree. Were you able to reach him? Jane asked, sitting on the hood of the vehicle, swinging her legs lazily. I don't know, Jack said, looking again under the truck at the shredded tire. You heard me. I kept telling him that we need the spare. We need the fucking spare. But I'm not sure he heard me. Thanks. That was fun. This is the part where I forget what I've read and what I haven't. Oh, because what I haven't is right here. So, this one's called stenography, or steganography. The steganography is hiding something in plain sight. Secretly seeking something still, though I've been salvaged from the crushing lightless depths of my private Mariana Trench warfare, fighting on in that endless space between the last letter of a first nickname and the first letter of a new last name, still tagging and scribbling never last messages in clunky steganography, public key encrypted, for all the world to puzzle over and pass by. And then I thought I'd end on kind of a sweet note, you know, returning to some of the poetry about my wife. This one is called Home. Here, with me, is still. With her, arms draped over dreams and moonlight on my chest and rhythmic breathing, us both, in amniotic slow motion, sublingual breathing, an ocean of night, through her mouth, through the pores of my dream skin. Tranquil, for a moment, I am vastness, in the always now, past the reflection of emotion, strands of her hair, woven intricately into the simple fabric of my thoughts, speaking secrets with her breathing in the warm space, around the space, within us both. I will keep these seconds like something real, like secret sand in my pocket, and savor their granularity, holding this space somewhere out of reach for when I need it most. Thank you guys, and thanks again to Buena Beach Bar and Grill for supporting this. Hopefully we'll have more readings here. I know next Thursday we're going to be doing a pumpkin carving, and it'll be judged the following week at the Halloween costume party, where there'll be a $100 grand prize for the winner. And that's it. Hey, thank you guys so much. Hey, thank you, my friend. Your resume is the next piece of literature. Good luck. You ready?
No. Just say your number.
You are. So you are.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Yeah, that was cool. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.